I should have known something was wrong when Lisa started calling me her roommate at parties. Not her husband, not even her boyfriend. Just her roommate who happened to share the same last name and sleep in the same bed. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Standing in April's ridiculously expensive living room, watching my wife of 3 years flirt with every guy in a 50-foot radius, I felt like a ghost haunting my own marriage. The kind of ghost that pays half the rent and does the dishes, but apparently doesn't exist when there are attractive men around. "Danny, could you grab me another wine?" Lisa called out, without even looking at me. She was too busy laughing at something Brad Morrison was saying. Brad worked at her architectural firm and had the kind of perfectly styled hair that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I walked to the kitchen, weaving through clusters of Lisa's friends who barely acknowledged my existence. April's kitchen looked like it belonged in a magazine, all marble countertops and stainless steel appliances that probably cost more than most people's cars. I found the wine, a bottle that cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a week. "How's married life treating you, Danny?" I turned to find Jared, Lisa's cousin, smirking at me with that expression he always wore when he was about to say something he thought was clever. Jared was one of those guys who peaked in college and spent the rest of his life trying to recapture that glory. He worked in sales, drove a leased BMW he couldn't afford, and had opinions about everything. "Can't complain," I said, pouring Lisa's wine. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see her touching Brad's arm while he told some story that was apparently hilarious. "Really? Because Lisa was just telling us how she's basically single these days." Jared's grin widened. "Said she's got a roommate who helps with the bills, but otherwise she's living the single life." The wine bottle felt heavy in my hand. "She said that?" "Oh yeah. April asked how marriage was going, and Lisa laughed and said, 'What marriage? I'm basically single with a roommate who does laundry.'" Jared took a swig of his beer. "Pretty funny, right? I mean, you guys are practically roommates anyway. When's the last time you two actually acted like a married couple?" I set the wine bottle down carefully on the counter. Through the doorway, I watched Lisa lean closer to Brad, her hand still on his arm. She threw her head back, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. "You know what, Jared? You're absolutely right. See? I knew you'd get it. Lisa's too young and too hot to be tied down to— No, I mean you're right about the roommate thing." I smiled at him, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. "And you know what the great thing about roommates is?" Jared looked confused. "What?" "They can move out anytime they want." I left Lisa's wine on the counter and walked back through the living room. She was still deep in conversation with Brad, her body language screaming availability. April and Zoe, her other best friend, were watching with the kind of fascination people usually reserved for car accidents. I stopped next to Lisa and waited for her to acknowledge me. It took almost 30 seconds. "Oh, Danny, did you get my wine?" "It's in the kitchen," I said. "Along with your single lifestyle." She blinked, confused. "What?" "Nothing, just wanted to let you know I'm heading home." "Already? But the party just started." She glanced at Brad, then back at me. "Can't you just, I don't know, find someone to talk to? Maybe play some pool downstairs?" "Sure thing, roommate." The word hit her like a slap. Her eyes widened, and for the first time all evening, I had her complete attention. "Danny, I didn't mean— No, you're absolutely right. We are roommates. And you know what? I think it's time this roommate found a new place to live." I turned and walked toward the door, leaving Lisa standing there with her mouth open. Behind me, I heard Jared laugh nervously and say something about couples and their fights. I heard April whisper something to Zoe. I heard Brad ask if everything was okay. But I didn't hear Lisa follow me. I drove home through the quiet streets, my hands steady on the wheel despite the rage burning in my chest. 3 years of marriage, and I'd become nothing more than a convenient bill splitter. A reliable roommate who did his share of the housework and didn't ask too many questions about where she was or who she was with. Our apartment looked different when I walked in. The same furniture, the same photos on the walls, the same mess Lisa had left in the living room before the party. But now it felt like a stage set for a play I no longer wanted to perform in. I went to our bedroom and pulled out the suitcases from the closet. Funny how little space my actual belongings took up. Most of the clothes were hers. Most of the decorations were hers. Most of the life we'd built together was hers, and I'd just been the supporting character who helped pay for it. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Where did you go? Everyone's asking about you." I typed back, "Home. Packing." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Packing for what?" "New apartment. Roommates don't need to give 2 weeks' notice." This time, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. And again. By the time I finished packing my clothes, she'd called 6 times and sent 12 increasingly frantic texts. The last one read, "Danny, stop being dramatic. We need to talk about this." I sat down at our kitchen table with the lease agreement and a pen. Lisa had insisted we both sign the lease when we moved in, but I'd been the one making most of the payments. A quick call to our landlord, Mr. Peterson, confirmed what I already knew. I could transfer my portion of the lease to Lisa and be out by the end of the month. There would be a fee, but it was worth it. I signed the transfer papers and left them on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. "You're right. Roommates move out. Lease is all yours now. Good luck with the rent." My phone rang again. This time I answered. "Danny, what the hell is wrong with you?" Lisa's voice was sharp, angry. "April said you just left without saying goodbye to anyone. That's incredibly rude." "Sorry, I figured since I was just the roommate, my presence wasn't really required." "Oh, come on. You know I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it, Lisa? Because Jared seemed to think you meant it exactly like it sounded." Silence. In the background, I could hear the party continuing. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses. Life going on without me, just like it had been for months. "Look, we can talk about this tomorrow," she said finally, "when you're not being so sensitive." "Sure. We can talk about it tomorrow, but I won't be here." "What do you mean you won't be here?" "I mean I'm moving out. Tonight." "You wanted to be single with a roommate who helps with bills? Well, now you can be single without one." "Danny, you're being ridiculous. You can't just move out because of one stupid comment." I looked around our apartment, her apartment now, and felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe, or just the absence of the constant low-level anxiety I'd been carrying around for months. "Watch me." I hung up and turned off my phone. By 3 a.m, I was loading the last of my boxes into my car. The apartment looked strange with my stuff gone, bigger somehow but emptier, like a stage after the crew has struck half the set. I'd found a furnished studio across town through a late-night Craigslist search. It wasn't much, a converted warehouse loft with exposed brick walls and windows that faced an alley. But it was available immediately, and the rent was something I could handle on my own. The landlord, a tired-looking woman named Mrs. Chen, had met me at midnight with keys and a lease that required first month's rent and a security deposit. Cash only. "Divorce?" she'd asked, not unkindly. "Something like that." She'd nodded, like she'd seen it all before. Fresh starts are expensive, but they're worth it. Now, standing in what used to be our bedroom, I felt the weight of the decision settling on me. 3 years of marriage, gone in one evening. 3 years of trying to make someone happy who apparently saw me as nothing more than a convenient bill splitter. I left the lease transfer papers on the kitchen counter, weighted down with Lisa's coffee mug, the one that said, "World's Best Wife," that I'd bought her for our first anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone had been buzzing constantly, even turned off somehow getting through with voicemails and texts. I finally powered it back on to find 23 missed calls from Lisa and a string of increasingly desperate messages. "Danny, please call me back. This is insane. You can't just leave. I'm coming home. We need to talk. Your phone is going straight to voicemail. This isn't funny anymore. I'm serious, Danny. Come back to the party and we'll figure this out. The last message was a voicemail, left just 10 minutes ago. Danny, I don't know what game you're playing, but it needs to stop. I'm coming home right now, and you better be there. I looked at my watch. 3:15 a.m. She'd be here soon, probably drunk and angry and ready to turn this into a fight that would wake the neighbors. But I wouldn't be here for it. I did one final walkthrough, checking closets and drawers for anything I might have missed. In the bathroom, I found my toothbrush still in the holder next to hers. For some reason, that almost broke me. 2 toothbrushes that would never sit together again. I took mine and left hers alone in the holder. The building was quiet as I carried my last box to the car. Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B was getting home from her night shift at the hospital, and she waved tiredly as she climbed the stairs. She'd probably wonder where I went. We'd chatted in the hallway dozens of times about nothing important. The weather, the building's broken elevator, her grandson's little league games. Moving out, Danny? She called softly. Yeah, fresh start. She nodded knowingly. Sometimes that's the only way. Good luck. I drove across town as the city slept around me. The streets were empty except for a few late-night delivery trucks and the occasional taxi. My studio apartment looked even smaller with my boxes stacked against the walls, but it felt more like home than the place I'd just left. I was arranging my clothes in the tiny closet when I heard Lisa's car pull up outside our old building. Even 3 miles away, I could picture her running up the stairs, key ready, expecting to find me waiting for her inevitable lecture about overreacting and being dramatic. Instead, she'd find empty closets and a lease with only her name on it. My phone rang at 3:47 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 3:48. Voicemail, 3:49, 3:50, 3:52. Finally, I answered. Where are you? Lisa's voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Your stuff is gone! Everything's gone! I told you I was moving out. I thought you were being dramatic. I didn't think you'd actually... She stopped, and I could hear her walking around the apartment. Danny, this is crazy. You can't just leave because of one stupid comment at a party. It wasn't one comment, Lisa. It was 3 years of comments. 3 years of being treated like I don't exist unless you need something. That's not true. When's the last time you introduced me as your husband? Silence. When's the last time we had dinner together without you checking your phone? More silence. When's the last time you asked me about my day, or my work, or anything about my life that didn't directly affect you? Danny. Her voice was smaller now, less angry. Look, maybe I've been distracted lately. Work has been crazy and you've been flirting with Brad Morrison. The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. I haven't been flirting with anyone. I have eyes, Lisa. I've had eyes for months. Tonight was just the first time you were honest about what I am to you. You're my husband. No. I was your roommate who you happened to be married to. But now I'm just a guy you used to know who helped pay your rent. She started crying then, or pretending to cry. With Lisa, it was sometimes hard to tell the difference. Danny, please, come home and we'll talk about this. We can work it out. I am home. What? I'm home. This is my home now. That's your apartment with your lease and your responsibility. I can't afford the rent by myself. Then get a roommate. A real one this time. I hung up and turned off my phone. The sun was coming up by the time I finished unpacking. My new studio had one big window that faced east, and the morning light streaming through it made everything look hopeful, clean, new. I made coffee with the cheap coffee maker I'd bought at an all-night grocery store and sat on my new couch, a second-hand thing I'd found on Facebook Marketplace that the previous owner had delivered at 2 a.m. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My phone stayed off all morning. I didn't want to hear Lisa's voice or read her texts or deal with the inevitable parade of friends who would call to tell me I was making a mistake. Instead, I sat in the quiet of my new life and tried to remember the last time I'd felt this peaceful. It had been a long time. I turned my phone back on Monday morning and immediately regretted it. 47 missed calls, 31 voicemails, and 82 text messages. Most were from Lisa, but some were from her friends, and even a few from people I barely knew who had apparently heard about our situation. The messages from Lisa followed a predictable pattern: anger, bargaining, guilt, more anger, desperation, and finally, threats. You're being completely unreasonable. Fine. If you want to throw away 3 years of marriage over nothing, that's your choice. I talked to my mom. She thinks you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Danny, I'm sorry about what I said. Can we please just talk? You can't just abandon your responsibilities. We have a lease. We have bills. I don't know who you think you are, but you can't just disappear when things get hard. And finally, I'm calling your work. This is insane. That last one made me smile. Lisa worked at Morrison & Associates Architecture. Yes, the same Morrison as Brad, and made decent money designing expensive houses for rich people. But she'd never paid much attention to what I did for work, beyond the fact that my paycheck helped cover our expenses. I was a freelance IT consultant, which meant I worked from home and had clients instead of a boss. There was no office for her to call, no supervisor to complain to, no HR department to involve in our personal drama. Just me, my laptop, and a client base that didn't care about my marital status as long as I fixed their computer problems. The freedom of that hit me for the first time. Lisa couldn't embarrass me at work because I didn't have a traditional workplace. She couldn't turn my colleagues against me because I didn't have colleagues. She couldn't use my job as leverage because my job was entirely under my control. I deleted most of the messages without reading them and focused on the few that actually mattered. One was from my client, Sarah Martinez, who needed help with her company's network security. Another was from Tom Bradley, who wanted me to set up a new system for his accounting firm. Both were jobs that would pay well and keep me busy. But the most interesting message was from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, this is April. Lisa's friend? We need to talk. It's important. April Chen was Lisa's best friend and the one who'd thrown the party where everything fell apart. She was also married to a successful lawyer and had her finger on the pulse of everyone's business. If April wanted to talk, it meant the gossip mill was already spinning. I called her back. Danny? Oh my God, thank you for calling me back. Lisa has been going crazy trying to reach you. I'm sure she has. Look, I'm not supposed to be calling you, but I thought you should know what's going on. I waited. Lisa came back to the party on Saturday night looking for you. She was pretty drunk and really upset, and she kept asking everyone if they'd seen you leave. Then she started crying and telling everyone that you'd moved out over some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Her word, not mine. Anyway, Brad Morrison offered to drive her home since she was too drunk to drive herself, and, well, April paused. Let's just say he didn't just drop her off at the curb. My chest tightened. He went inside. His car was still there when I drove by on Sunday morning. Make of that what you will. I closed my eyes. 3 days. I'd been gone for 3 days, and Lisa was already sleeping with the guy she'd been flirting with at the party. Danny, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. I'm really sorry. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. Why are you telling me this, April? You're her best friend. Because what she did at my party was shitty, and what she's doing now is even shittier. You're a good guy, Danny. You deserved better than being called a roommate in front of everyone. After I hung up, I sat in my studio apartment and tried to process what I was feeling. Anger, yes. Hurt, definitely. But also something that surprised me. Relief. Lisa had shown me exactly who she was, and now I didn't have to wonder anymore. I didn't have to make excuses for her behavior or try to convince myself that things would get better. She'd made her choice, and now I could make mine. I created a fake Instagram account using a generic name and photo, then searched for Lisa's profile. She'd always been active on social media, posting carefully curated photos of our life together that made everything look perfect. But her recent posts told a different story. Saturday night, posted at 2:17 a.m., a photo of her and Brad at the party, both holding drinks and standing very close together. The caption read, "Sometimes the best nights are the ones you don't plan, living my best life under freedom." Sunday morning, posted at 11:43 a.m., a photo of expensive coffee and pastries from the boutique cafe downtown. Sunday brunch hits different when you're doing exactly what you want. You're treating yourself. New chapter. Sunday evening. A selfie in our old apartment, her apartment now, with the caption, "Home Sweet Home. Finally have the space to be myself. Independence, darn fresh start." Each post had dozens of likes and comments from her friends, all supportive and encouraging. "You look amazing. Living for this energy. So proud of you for choosing yourself." Not one person asked where I was or what had happened to her husband. I scrolled through the comments and found several from Brad Morrison, each one flirtier than the last. "Beautiful as always. Brunch looks good, but the company looks better. You deserve all the happiness in the world." My phone buzzed with another call from Lisa. I declined it and went back to her Instagram. Her most recent post, from this morning, was a photo of her at work, sitting at her drafting table with blueprints spread out in front of her. She looked professional and confident, like a woman who had her life together. The caption read, "Back to work and loving the focus. Amazing what you can accomplish when you eliminate distractions. Architecture. Girl boss class priorities." Distractions. That's what I'd been to her. A distraction from the life she really wanted. I screenshotted the post and several others, then closed the app. Lisa wanted to play games on social media. Fine. But she'd forgotten that I was the one who'd set up all her accounts, helped her with her privacy settings, and taught her how to use social media safely. She'd also forgotten that I knew all her passwords. I opened my laptop and got to work. Tuesday evening, I sat in my car across the street from Morrison and Associates Architecture, watching Lisa leave work with Brad Morrison. They walked close together, his hand on the small of her back as he guided her toward his car, a silver BMW that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. They drove to Romano's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown where Lisa and I had celebrated our 2nd anniversary. Through the window, I could see them at a corner table, leaning toward each other in intimate conversation. Brad reached across the table to touch her hand, and Lisa smiled the way she used to smile at me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thought you should see this." Attached was a photo of Lisa and Brad kissing in the parking lot outside her office. The timestamp showed it was taken an hour ago. I texted back, "Who is this?" "Someone who thinks you're getting screwed over. Check his Instagram." I looked up Brad Morrison's profile. His bio read, "Architect, wine enthusiast, classic car collector, living life to the fullest." His recent posts were mostly photos of expensive wine, architectural projects, and his prized possession, a restored 1967 Mustang convertible that he apparently kept in a private garage on the top floor of his downtown condo building. The most recent post, from this afternoon, showed the Mustang gleaming under fluorescent lights with the caption, "She's not just a car, she's a work of art. Some things are worth more than money, just classic car, just restoration, just baby girl." The comments were full of car enthusiasts praising the restoration work and asking about the engine specs. Brad had responded to each one with detailed technical information, clearly proud of his mechanical knowledge. I screenshotted the post and the location tag, Morrison Tower, Penthouse Garage, then closed the app. Some things are worth more than money. We'd see about that. Wednesday night, I drove downtown and parked 3 blocks away from Morrison Tower. The building was one of those modern glass and steel structures that looked impressive during the day, but turned into a dark monolith at night. The penthouse garage was accessible through a private elevator that required a keycard, but the stairwell was unlocked for fire safety reasons. I wore dark clothes and thin gloves, and I carried a small backpack with supplies I'd picked up at various stores around town. Nothing illegal, just items that could be purchased by anyone for legitimate purposes. The stairwell was poorly lit and smelled like concrete dust and industrial cleaner. I climbed 18 floors, my footsteps echoing in the narrow space. By the time I reached the top, my legs were burning and I was breathing hard. Apparently, 3 years of married life hadn't been great for my cardiovascular fitness. The penthouse garage was exactly what I'd expected, a climate-controlled space with polished concrete floors and professional lighting. There were 6 parking spaces, but only 2 were occupied. Brad's Mustang and a white Tesla that probably belonged to another penthouse resident. The Mustang was even more beautiful in person. The paint job was flawless, the chrome bumpers gleamed, and the red leather interior looked like it had never been sat in. This wasn't just a car to Brad. It was his identity, his pride, his way of showing the world that he was successful and sophisticated. I walked around the car slowly, admiring the craftsmanship. The restoration had been done by professionals, probably costing tens of thousands of dollars. Every detail was perfect, from the white wall tires to the vintage radio to the wooden steering wheel. Then I got to work. I started with the tires, not slashing them. That would be vandalism and potentially dangerous. Instead, I carefully removed the valve caps and used a small tool to depress the valve stems, letting the air out slowly and quietly. All 4 tires deflated gradually, the car settling lower and lower until it was sitting on its rims. Next, I opened the hood. The engine was as pristine as the exterior, every component cleaned and polished to showroom condition. I didn't touch anything mechanical. I wasn't trying to cause permanent damage, just inconvenience and embarrassment. Instead, I opened the small container of fish oil I'd brought and carefully applied it to various non-essential surfaces under the hood. Not enough to cause damage, but enough to create a smell that would be difficult to locate and eliminate. The oil was clear and would be nearly impossible to see, but the smell would be unmistakable after a few days in the enclosed garage. Finally, I left a note under the windshield wiper. Some things are worth more than money, like keeping your hands to yourself. Consider this a friendly reminder. I was back in the stairwell within 10 minutes, my heart pounding with adrenaline. As I reached the 15th floor, I heard the elevator ding and the sound of voices echoing in the garage above. Someone was coming home. I quickened my pace, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Behind me, I could hear muffled conversation and then a shout of anger that carried clearly through the concrete walls. "What the hell?" I reached the ground floor and slipped out through the stairwell exit, which opened onto an alley behind the building. My car was 3 blocks away, and I walked calmly through the downtown streets. Just another person heading home from a late dinner or evening out. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from the same unknown number. "Nice work. Check his Instagram in about an hour." I drove home and waited. At 11:47 p.m., Brad Morrison posted a photo of his deflated Mustang with the caption, "Some coward vandalized my car tonight. If anyone has information about this, please contact me immediately. This is a classic vehicle worth more than most people's houses. Security is reviewing camera footage. Just vandalism. Jacques coward. Jacques classic car." The comments poured in immediately. Fellow car enthusiasts expressed outrage and sympathy. Lisa commented, "OMG, Brad, I'm so sorry this happened. Some people are just jealous of success." But there were other comments too. People asking if he had insurance. People pointing out that the car looked undamaged, just deflated. People suggesting that maybe he should park it somewhere more secure if it was really worth that much. And one comment that made me smile. "Maybe you should be more careful about whose wife you're sleeping with." The comment was deleted within minutes, but I'd screenshotted it. Thursday morning, Lisa called me for the first time since Monday. "Danny, we need to talk." "About what?" "About whatever game you're playing. I know it was you." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Brad's car, Danny. Don't pretend you don't know." "I heard someone had car trouble downtown." "That's a shame. Those old cars can be unreliable." "This isn't funny. You could get in serious trouble for vandalism." "Did I vandalize something?" "Because I've been home working all week. I have client emails and timestamps to prove it." Silence. "Lisa, if Brad Morrison's car got vandalized, maybe he should think about why someone would want to do that. Maybe he should be more careful about whose life he's interfering with." "Are you threatening him?" "I'm just saying that actions have consequences. You taught me that." I hung up and went back to work on my laptop. I had a new client project that needed attention, and unlike some people, I took my professional responsibilities seriously. But first, I had one more call to make. The unknown number that had been texting me turned out to belong to Zoe Martinez, Lisa's other close friend. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from Lisa's usual haunts. "I probably shouldn't be here," Zoe said, sliding into the booth across from me. She looked nervous, constantly glancing around like she expected Lisa to walk in at any moment. "Then why are you?" "Because what Lisa's doing is wrong, and someone needs to tell you the truth." Zoe had always been the quieter one in Lisa's friend group, overshadowed by April's confidence and Lisa's drama. She worked as a nurse at the children's hospital and had a reputation for being honest to a fault. The truth about what? About Brad, about work, about everything. She pulled out her phone. "Lisa thinks she's being so clever, but she's not as discreet as she thinks." She showed me a series of text messages between her and Lisa, dating back 3 weeks. Lisa: "Brad asked me to stay late again to work on the Henderson project." Zoe: "That's the 3rd time this week. Are you sure it's just work?" Lisa: "Maybe, maybe not. He's definitely interested, and he's so much more exciting than Danny." Zoe: "Lisa, you're married." Lisa: "Barely. Danny and I are basically roommates anyway. He wouldn't even notice if I disappeared." The messages continued, getting more explicit as Lisa described her growing attraction to Brad and her frustration with our marriage. She complained about everything: my job, my appearance, my lack of ambition, my boring personality. "She's been planning this for weeks," Zoe said. "The party was just her excuse to make it public." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you deserve to know. And because Lisa's been telling everyone that you abandoned her without warning, that you're having some kind of breakdown. She's making herself look like the victim." I scrolled through more messages. In them, Lisa painted a picture of herself as a long-suffering wife, trapped in a loveless marriage with a man who didn't appreciate her. She never mentioned the bills I paid, the housework I did, the ways I'd supported her career and dreams. "There's more," Zoe said. "About work." She showed me another conversation, this one from yesterday. Lisa: "Mr. Morrison called me into his office today. He knows about me and Brad." Zoe: "Oh no. Are you in trouble?" Lisa: "Actually, no. He said he understands that these things happen, and as long as it doesn't affect our work quality, he's not going to make it a big deal." Zoe: "That's a relief." Lisa: "He did say I should be careful about appearances, though. Apparently some people have been talking." Zoe: "What kind of talking?" Lisa: "Office gossip. Someone saw us having lunch together last week and started spreading rumors. Mr. Morrison doesn't want it to become a distraction." Zoe: "Maybe you should cool things down for a while." Lisa: "Why should I? I'm finally happy for the first time in years. Danny's gone, I can do whatever I want, and Brad makes me feel alive again." I handed the phone back to Zoe. "She's right about one thing. She can do whatever she wants now." "Danny, I'm really sorry. I know this must be hard to read." "Actually, it's not. It's clarifying." We talked for another hour. Zoe filled in details about Lisa's behavior over the past few months. The late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the gradual withdrawal from our marriage. She also told me about the office dynamics at Morrison and Associates. Mr. Morrison, that's Brad's father, by the way, runs a tight ship. He's old school, very concerned about the firm's reputation. If he knew how serious things were between Lisa and Brad, he might not be so understanding. What do you mean? I mean, Brad has a reputation. Lisa isn't the first married woman he's gotten involved with. There was a woman last year, and another one the year before. Mr. Morrison had to smooth things over both times. Smooth things over how? The woman from last year? She got transferred to the firm's satellite office in Portland. The one from the year before quit architecture entirely and moved to another state. Brad has a pattern of getting involved with women, then losing interest when things get complicated. I thought about this as I drove home. Lisa thought she'd found her prince charming, but she'd actually found a predator who specialized in targeting married women, and she'd blown up her marriage for the privilege of being his next victim. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of town and rented a small unit under a fake name. Then I went home and gathered everything I had that could potentially embarrass Lisa. Old photos from college parties, screenshots of her social media posts, copies of emails and text messages she'd sent me over the years. Most of it was harmless, the kind of stuff everyone accumulates in a long relationship. But some of it painted a picture of Lisa that was very different from the professional, sophisticated image she projected at work. There were photos from her wild phase in her early 20s. Nothing explicit, but definitely not the kind of thing she'd want her conservative boss to see. There were emails where she complained about clients and made fun of their taste. There were text messages where she gossiped about coworkers and shared confidential information about projects. I organized everything carefully and stored it in the unit, along with copies of our financial records, lease agreements, and other documents that proved how much I'd contributed to our life together. Then I went home and started making phone calls. The first call was to Brad Morrison's ex-wife. It took some digging online to find her contact information, but social media made it surprisingly easy to track down Jennifer Morrison, now Jennifer Walsh, living in Seattle with her new husband. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said when she answered. "My name is Danny Thompson. I'm calling about your ex-husband, Brad." "Oh, God. What did he do now?" "He's having an affair with my wife. I was hoping you might be able to give me some insight into his patterns." Jennifer laughed bitterly. "His patterns? Honey, I wrote the book on Brad Morrison's patterns. How much time do you have?" We talked for an hour. Jennifer told me everything: Brad's history of cheating, his manipulative behavior, his tendency to target vulnerable women and then discard them when he got bored. She also told me about his weaknesses. Brad's whole identity is built on being successful and sophisticated. He can't handle being embarrassed or looking foolish in front of people he wants to impress. If you really want to hurt him, don't go after his car or his money. Go after his reputation. The second call was to Mr. Morrison Sr.'s office. I didn't speak to him directly. That would come later. Instead, I spoke to his assistant and scheduled a consultation about some fictional architectural work for my fictional business. The appointment was set for next Friday afternoon. By the time I finished my preparations, it was after midnight. I sat in my studio apartment, surrounded by evidence of Lisa's betrayal and Brad's predatory behavior, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. For 3 years, I'd been the passive partner in my marriage, accepting Lisa's treatment and making excuses for her behavior. I'd been the supporting character in her story, invisible and unimportant. But now I was writing my own story. And in this story, the quiet roommate was about to become the most important character of all. Friday afternoon, I walked into Morrison and Associates Architecture wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that made me look like exactly what I was pretending to be: a successful businessman with money to spend on architectural services. The reception area was all glass and steel, with expensive furniture and carefully arranged architectural models that screamed sophistication and success. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, directed me to a conference room to wait for Mr. Morrison. Richard Morrison Sr. was everything I'd expected, silver-haired, expensively dressed, with the kind of confidence that came from decades of success. He greeted me with a firm handshake and the assumption that I was there to spend a lot of money on his services. "Mr. Thompson, I understand you're interested in discussing a commercial project?" "Actually, Mr. Morrison, I'm here to discuss your son." His smile faltered. "I'm sorry?" "Your son Brad is having an affair with my wife, Lisa Thompson. She works here. I thought you should know what kind of behavior is happening in your office." Mr. Morrison's face went through several expressions: confusion, anger, and finally, resignation. "Mr. Thompson, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." I opened my portfolio and spread out printed copies of text messages, social media posts, and photos. This is my wife texting her friend about staying late to work on the Henderson project. This is your son commenting on her Instagram posts. This is a photo of them kissing in your parking lot. He studied the evidence with the careful attention of a man who'd dealt with this kind of problem before. "Mr. Morrison, I'm not here to cause trouble for your business. I'm here because I think you deserve to know what's happening under your roof. My wife has been sharing confidential client information via text message. Your son has been using company resources and company time to conduct a personal relationship. And this isn't the first time, is it?" His shoulders sagged slightly. "What do you want, Mr. Thompson?" "I want them to face consequences for their choices. Real consequences." We talked for 20 minutes. Mr. Morrison confirmed what Zoe had told me. Brad had a pattern of targeting married employees and clients, and the firm had quietly dealt with the fallout multiple times. He was tired of cleaning up his son's messes, tired of the liability and the gossip and the potential lawsuits. "If I take action against them, it won't bring your marriage back," he said. "My marriage is over. But maybe your next female employee won't have to deal with your son's behavior." Mr. Morrison studied me for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Lisa described you as weak, passive, someone who would just disappear quietly and let them get on with their lives." "Lisa doesn't know me as well as she thinks." That evening, I went to Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar downtown where Lisa's friends sometimes gathered after work. I'd never been there during our marriage. Lisa always said it was too loud and crowded for her taste, but I'd heard enough stories to know it was a popular spot for office workers and young professionals. I sat at the bar and ordered a beer, listening to the conversations around me. It didn't take long to hear Lisa's name. "Did you hear about Lisa Thompson?" a woman at a nearby table was saying. "Apparently her husband just disappeared, packed up and left without saying a word." "I heard she was cheating on him with Brad Morrison," her friend replied. "You know, the architect with the fancy car? The one who got vandalized? I heard that was her husband too." "Really? Damn. He seems so quiet and harmless." I smiled and took another sip of my beer. The conversation continued, with more details being added and embellished with each retelling. By the time I left an hour later, the story had grown into something much more dramatic than the truth, but not necessarily less accurate. Saturday morning, I got a call from April. "Danny, what did you do?" "Good morning to you too, April." "Lisa called me crying. She said she got fired yesterday afternoon. She said you went to her boss and made up lies about her." "I didn't make up anything. I just shared some information that I thought her boss should have." She also said Brad got fired too, and that his father is making him sell his car to pay back the company for misuse of resources. I hadn't known about the car, but it didn't surprise me. Mr. Morrison struck me as the kind of man who believed in making the punishment fit the crime. "That's unfortunate. Danny, this is serious. Lisa doesn't have a job. She can't pay her rent. She's talking about having to move back in with her parents. She should have thought about that before she decided to be single. Look, I know she hurt you, but this is going too far. You're destroying her life. I'm not destroying anything, April. I'm just letting her experience the natural consequences of her choices. She wanted to be single and independent. Now she gets to find out what that actually means. April was quiet for a moment. She wants to talk to you. She says she'll do anything to work this out. There's nothing to work out. We're divorced in everything but paperwork, and I'll be filing that on Monday. Danny, April, I appreciate you trying to help, but this conversation is over. Lisa made her choice. Now she gets to live with it. I hung up and went back to my laptop. I had work to do, bills to pay, and a life to build. My life, not the supporting role in someone else's story. Sunday evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Danny, it's Lisa. Her voice was different, smaller, less confident than I'd heard it in years. I'm at Murphy's Tavern, she said. Can you please come down here? I just want to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just give me 10 minutes. If you still want nothing to do with me after that, I'll leave you alone forever. Against my better judgment, I drove to the bar. Lisa was sitting alone at a corner table, nursing a drink and looking more defeated than I'd ever seen her. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup was smudged, and she was wearing clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. You came, she said when I sat down across from her. 10 minutes. Danny, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please, can we try to work this out? I'll do anything. Anything? Yes, anything. I'll quit social media. I'll go to counseling. I'll sign a prenup that gives you everything if I cheat again. Just please don't leave me with nothing. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember when I'd fallen in love with this woman. She'd been different then, or maybe I'd been different. Maybe we'd both been playing roles that we couldn't sustain. Lisa, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think you could humiliate me in public, cheat on me with your coworker, and then I'd just come crawling back when things got difficult? I thought you'd fight for me. I thought you'd get angry, and we'd have a big fight, and then we'd make up and everything would go back to normal. Normal? You mean me being invisible while you did whatever you wanted? She started crying then, real tears this time. I didn't mean it. The roommate thing, I was just trying to sound cool in front of everyone. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. That's exactly what you meant. That's exactly what I was to you. Danny, I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of having someone around to pay half the bills and make you feel less alone. But you don't love me. You don't even know me. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Please don't go. I have nowhere else to turn. Brad won't return my calls. His father banned me from the building. My parents are furious with me. I don't have any money, I don't have a job, and I can't afford the rent on my own. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to blow up your life. Danny, please. I'm begging you. The bar had gone quiet around us. Other patrons were watching our conversation with the kind of fascination people usually reserved for car accidents. Lisa's voice was getting louder and more desperate, and she was starting to attract exactly the kind of attention she'd always hated. I'll tell everyone the truth, she said, her voice rising. I'll post on social media about what really happened. I'll tell them I was the one who cheated, that you were a good husband and I threw it all away. It's too late for that, Lisa. It's not too late. We can fix this. She was shouting now, and the bartender was starting to look concerned. Several people had their phones out, probably recording the scene for social media. Lisa, you need to stop. I won't stop. She stood up so fast her chair fell over. You can't just throw away 3 years of marriage. You can't just abandon me. The bar was completely silent now, except for Lisa's voice echoing off the walls. Everyone was staring at us, and I could see the recognition in some of their faces. This was the woman they'd been gossiping about, the one whose husband had disappeared, whose affair had cost her everything. Lisa, I said quietly, you're making a scene. I don't care. I don't care who's watching. You ruined my life. I didn't ruin anything. You did this to yourself. You went to my boss. You got me fired. You destroyed my relationship with Brad. I told the truth. That's all I did. She lunged at me then, trying to hit me with her purse. I stepped back and she stumbled, catching herself on the table. The bartender was already coming around the bar, and I could hear someone calling the police. Ma'am, you need to calm down, the bartender said. He destroyed my life, Lisa screamed, pointing at me. He's a psychopath. He stalked me and sabotaged my job and… Lisa, stop. My voice cut through her hysteria like a knife. Just stop. She looked at me with wild eyes, mascara running down her cheeks, her hair disheveled from her outburst. Around us, phones were recording, people were whispering, and the bartender was clearly preparing to have her removed. You want to know what I did? I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I left. That's all. I left a woman who called me her roommate in front of all her friends, who was cheating on me with her coworker, who treated me like I was invisible unless she needed something. I left, and I let her live the single life she said she wanted. The bar was completely silent. Everything that happened after that, losing her job, losing her boyfriend, losing her friends, that wasn't me. That was the natural consequence of her choices. I didn't destroy her life. She did. Lisa collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. The only thing I'm guilty of, I continued, is finally having enough self-respect to walk away from someone who didn't value me. And if that makes me the bad guy in this story, then I guess I can live with that. I pulled out my wallet and left $20 on the table for my beer and Lisa's drink. Goodbye, Lisa. I hope you figure out how to be happy on your own. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern and into the cool night air, leaving behind 3 years of marriage and a lifetime of being someone's invisible roommate. Behind me, I could hear Lisa still crying and the low murmur of voices as the other patrons discussed what they'd just witnessed. My phone buzzed with a text from April. Holy shit, Danny, that video is already all over Instagram. I didn't reply. I drove home to my studio apartment, to my new life, to the freedom of being exactly who I was without having to apologize for it. For the first time in years, I felt like the main character in my own story, and it felt amazing.